Okay, we are continuing our series on light. Hopefully tonight we're going to start with light and color, learning different things that are connected to light and color as taught over in different teachings in the Torah. So we start, the best way to start any discussion of any topic is looking at the Hebrew word for color is tseva, Sadi Beit Ayin. Now we notice that the word tseva is very, very close to the word sheva, which means seven. So here you have a beautiful Hebrew linguistic connection between color and the seven colors of the rainbow. The seven primary colors that we think of is with the rainbow, and seva, which means color, and sheva, which means seven. But it goes way beyond this, way beyond just a similarity in language. We see that light is created on the first day of creation. And Rashi points out, very, very similar to the idea of the Big Bang, where Rashi says that everything that would ever be created, excuse me, was in essence created on the first day. And everything else was an unfolding, a manifestation of the energies of the first day. That's why the first day is Vayhi Erev Vayivoker Yom Echad. Not the first day, but one day. In other words, everything that would ever be created was created in the oneness of the first day. So we see a beautiful, it's an image, it's like a visualization that since we have 7 days of creation and we have 7 colors of the rainbow, we can imagine that all of creation is like the unfolding of the colors of creation through the 7 days of creation. It's just a very, very nice image. But it even goes deeper because 7 times in the story of creation, the Torah says that God saw something that it was good. Ki tov. The first one is by light. V'yar Elokim et ha'or ki tov. God saw the light, that it was good. Now again, the fact that 7 times altogether it says ki tov, again is this idea that everything is an unfolding of the first day of creation. And on the first day of creation, the most explicit, even though in the first verse it says God created the heavens and the earth, but as far as a statement, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, hints to that in essence, and we've talked about this throughout the series, everything is a manifestation of God's light. And if you remember, we learned from the Zohar that all matter, all materiality, all physicality is thickened light. And this is what science would say, that all matter is energy, even though it doesn't appear to be energy. But the bottom line, all matter is energy. So all matter is light. And this is revealed on the first day of creation. And it manifests itself in Sheva. again, Seva is color and Sheva is 7. So the 7 days of creation is like a rainbow. Now we see something that I think everyone has heard, that if you take a whole mixture of colors and you spin them at a high speed, what you get is white. So this is the idea of light shining through a crystal. Because in a sense, all color is coming from what we'll call the white light. But here the white light means the unity of light, the oneness of light. So the first person to seemingly to discover this was Isaac Newton, where he came to understand that colors were coming from light. And he did it through seeing through a crystal. He came to understand light shining through a crystal is going to divide into different colors. So the first day again ends Yom Echad, 1 day. And so in a sense, all color is coming from the essence of light. From the essence of light. So now Isaac Newton and others, actually, Rav Ginsburg brings down that way before Isaac Newton, Hillel HaZaken understood that the color was coming from the essence of light itself. Because there's a whole discussion about what blessing do we make in Havdalah on the candle. And we go by Hillel HaZaken's opinion, Mo'orei ha'esh, the colors of the fire, the lights of the fire. And in the discussion, it's clear that what Hillel was saying is that there's more than meets the eye when it comes to color. Color is engraved, is stamped in the light itself. But one thing that Isaac Newton did do, again, maybe not the first person, but he became famous, is for comparing the 7 colors of the rainbow and the 7 notes of an octave in music. So his connecting music to light, actually the Vilna Gaon also wrote about this. The Vilna Gaon, not just was he a genius in Torah, but he was a genius in mathematics and music and medicine, the whole gamut of human knowledge. But he also commented on the connection between color and sound. And this reminds us of that at Har Sinai. So it says that God opened the 7 heavens. Here's another 7 here. That God opened the 7 heavens, and the consciousness of the people transcended to such a point where it says that they saw the sounds of the shofar. They saw the sounds of the shofar. So this is connecting really sound, music, and light, color. And if we really look at it, because light, the colors that we see, first of all, light itself is a small part of the electromagnetic spectrum. On the spectrum, there are gamma rays and ultra rays and infrared, a whole range of different frequencies. Light is a band in a much bigger picture. And light is working on frequencies, color and frequencies and light and the electromagnetic energy. But that's what music is also. Music are vibrations and frequencies of sound. We know that there are certain animals, the same thing. What we hear is not the whole spectrum of what can be heard. There are animals that can hear sounds and can emit sounds that we don't hear. We simply don't hear. So here we're connecting color and sound, color and music. So when we go even deeper, this is one of the ideas of what's called string theory, which is still a theory because there's no instrument small enough to measure what they're talking about. But the idea is that the smallest particles or entities of reality are vibrating strings. And that's why when we talk about string theory, so there's a very famous book called The Elegant Universe by Brian Greene. I think I've mentioned it before, The Elegant Universe. And in the book, a number of times, he says the following, that the parable or the idea that the world is music has taken on a startling reality. The metaphor, that's the word he uses, that the metaphor of music to describe the physical world has taken on a startling reality. So everything is vibrating. Every atom is vibrating. It has frequencies. And so here we're just connecting light, color, music, matter, like all together. And one of the key things here is the number 7, because 7 is such an important number. So it's the 7 days of creation. The 7 times God said that what he created was good. The first one is light. And I'm just going to throw this in because last week in the Torah portion, we began the book of Shemot. And we hear about the birth of Moshe. And it says that when Moshe was born, they saw that he was good. So they asked, well, what does that mean? And so Rashi explains the tradition that when Moshe was born, light filled the room. And that's why actually we're told that Moshe had a number of names. One of them was Tuvia, the goodness of God, because he was full of light. And remember later when he brings down the tablets of the law, the second tablets, it says that his face was glowing with light so much that the people were afraid to look at him. He was just beaming light, beaming light. So I think last week or the week before when we learned about light and vessels, so we brought a Gematria, that the numerical value of light when it's a plural word, or wrote, equals 613. In other words, the plural of the singular or equals 613. But also in the account of creation, when it says that God saw et haor, saw the light. So et haor also equals 613. So it's brought down in different Kabbalistic teachings that the 613 mitzvah can be compared to 613 shades of color of the light. And what verse do we use? Ner mitzvah v'Torah or. A mitzvah is like a candle, and the Torah is like light. So in other words, Torah is like the all-encompassing light, and each mitzvah is like an individual candle of these, but of color, a spectrum of 613 colors. Maybe the closest we can think of this is the famous Crayola boxes of 64 crayons, which are 64 different colors. Here we're talking about 613 colors. Each mitzvah is like a shade, it's like a color. And when they're all put together, you have the light. The light encompasses all of the color. So as far as the sefirot go, it's said that Chachma is the light and Bina is color. Now that makes a lot of sense, because usually when we talk about Chachma, we talk about like a lightning flash of inspiration, of intuition, of wisdom. So a lightning flash like lights up the sky. And then Bina, it can translate it into different shades of light, different colors. And so one of the expressions we use for Bina is Aim Habanim Smecha. A mother of children is joyous. Chachma is always called father. Bina is always called mother. So who are the children of Bina? The 7 lower sefirot. So you have the 7 lower sefirot are like the colors of the original light of Chachma. So we mentioned about a rainbow. So we're going to talk a little bit about that now. And we've talked about the paradoxes of light in general from a scientific point of view. And we've mentioned many different paradoxes of light according to the Torah. Just as a very quick review, there are probably more than this, but there are 3 great paradoxes of light as far as science goes, is that light is both a particle and a wave. And it has scientists mystified to this day how that works, because it's very paradoxical. We won't go into it, but they're almost mutually exclusive. If it's a particle, it's a particle and not a wave. If it's a wave and not a particle. And yet light can be either one, and they can be both simultaneously. And all depends on the observer and the nature of the circumstance. The other paradox is that as far as particles, a photon has no mass, which kind of defies logic, because if it's a thing, if it's something, it should have mass. Matter has mass. Light has no mass. So that's why we've talked about this, that's why it's the perfect bridge between spiritual and physical. And then there's the paradox that at the speed of light, no time passes, which also boggles the mind. As far as the Torah is concerned, we have the paradox, and we can't go over it again, but throughout the Torah, light is revealed and hidden. Revealed and hidden. From the time of creation, from the menorah, from the time of the Hanukkah miracle, many, many different examples where light is revealed and then hidden away. So I mention all of this because even though we might not think about it, the rainbow also is very paradoxical. Because on one hand, first of all, everyone gets very excited when there's a rainbow. Why? It's beautiful. It's like a phenomenon of nature. But what is the rainbow teaching us? On one hand, it's a simon, it's a sign of judgment. It came after the flood, after the world is destroyed. On the other hand, it's a covenant that God made with Noah not to destroy the world again through water. But the appearance of a rainbow, there is a disagreement. Is this a good sign? Or maybe not such a good sign? Well, the truth is it's a little of both. It's a little of both. So that's why Reish Lakish and others, the custom is, even though it's hard, we're told not to stare at a rainbow. Look at a rainbow is one thing, but to really stare at a rainbow, we're told not. And there's one of the explanations is from what I said, is that there is judgment there. Reish Lakish in the Gemara had a different idea, as he said that the Shekhinah is manifest in a rainbow. And therefore, we don't want to stare at it. We want to acknowledge it. It's very similar. We're told that we're not supposed to watch the Kohanim when they're duchenim, when they're giving the priestly blessing, because it's a very, very high energy. A rainbow is a very, very high. It's a covenant, but there's also, like I said, so it's very paradoxical. It's somewhat paradoxical. Okay, so now I'm just going to mention a few more ideas in the Torah that relate to color. And really, we're only going to do two. One is, actually, we'll do three. The first one we'll do is, in previous classes, we've talked a lot about the idea called Hashmal. This is an energy that Ezekiel the prophet saw in his what's called the vision of the chariot. And even though some people translate it, you'll find translations where they translate it as a color, but Rav Ginsburg says it's not really a color, it's an energy. And we discussed that Hashmal is probably the most paradoxical word in the entire Tanakh, in the entire Bible, because Chash means silent and Mal means speaking. So we've discussed it. This is the sounds of silence. This is a paradoxical idea. But in his vision, Ezekiel's vision, he saw the Hashmal in what appeared to be a rainbow. And that's why some people translate it as a color. He saw it, part of his vision, he saw also a rainbow effect, and the Hashmal was coming from or near the rainbow. So what I said before, that there is a paradoxical element to a rainbow. It's both good and not so good, a sign of good and a sign of kind of warning, or a surety that there won't be one again. It kind of goes back and forth. And the fact that Ezekiel saw the Hashmal near the rainbow also tells us how paradoxical Hashmal is. Now, the other two places where color appears, one is in the tzitzit. And we know it says in the Torah that one of the strands of the tzitzit were techelet. And even that, there's discussion the exact color of what techelet is. But most people consider it a bluish, some kind of shade of blue. And for thousands of years, the tradition of, because it comes from the dye of a certain shellfish in the Mediterranean. And there was, somewhere along the way, it seemed that there was unsurety, what shellfish are we actually talking about to make the techelet? And about 150 years ago, the Rabbi of Radzin did an enormous amount of research, and he claimed that he had re-identified the exact shellfish. And you'll see today, many people have the techelet string again in their tzitzit. Not everyone, not nearly everyone, but there are major groups that do wear the techelet now. So there is a beautiful parable. It's more of a visualization or a stream of consciousness. There in the early 1900s, there was a new type of writing. I believe it's attributed to the book Ulysses, James Joyce, called Stream of Consciousness, which was like a new way of writing, where the character in the book, the book would record just like the way our minds think, which is really a stream of consciousness. 24/7, our minds are running and connecting. So in the Gemara, there's a beautiful stream of consciousness that has to do with techelet. So it says techelet domel yam. This color techelet, some kind of a blue color, is compared to the color of the sea. V'yam domeh l'rakia. And the blue of the yam, of the sea, is like the blue of the firmament. The rakia domeh l'kisei hakavod. And the firmament, it appears similar to the throne of glory. So there's 3 steps here. The techelet, this blue is like the sea is like the firmament, and the firmament is like the throne of glory. So this is just, it's like a leap of consciousness. So you look at the techelet. We know that in the passage of tzitzit, it says if you look at the tzitzit, it will remind you of all the mitzvot. Where do they learn that? That's also like a real stream of consciousness, because the word tzitzit, the numerical value of tzitzit is 600. Now, what's interesting, because in the Torah, tzitzit is written without the second yud. Nonetheless, the sages said when you spell it out in full, for those who come to the Sunday class, actually, we went over this, the idea that certain words are written what's called malay, full, and some are chaser. Some are spelled with a full spelling, and some are seemingly missing letters. So when you spell the word tzitzit in full, it equals 600. There are 8 strands. There are 8 strands in one of the grouping of tzitzit, and there are 5 knots. So 5 and 8 is 13. Along with the 600 for tzitzit equals 613. This is also a stream of consciousness. This is like an amazing leap of numerical connections. But it says clearly in the passage that when you look at the tzitzit, it will remind you of all of the mitzvah. So based on that, the sages were like, okay, how by looking at the tzitzit are we reminded of all 613 mitzvah? So they came up with this very inventive numerical connections to help us remember. So just speaking about this, we just said that in the early 1900s, there was this new type of writing called stream of consciousness. But if anyone has learned Talmud on the inside or Midrash on the inside, they were thousands of years ahead of James Joyce. The Talmud is the most incredible stream of consciousness, especially the way it goes in and out of Jewish law and what's called the Agadah, the stories, the parables, the allegories, the symbolism, the Kabbalistic meanings, the hints, and it just goes in and out and in and out. And that's why people spend a lifetime learning it, because the depths of the connections between things, every time you learn it, it's like there's new discoveries. Okay, so that's this beautiful idea of the Techelet. And the last thing we'll discuss here is that in the tabernacle, the Mishkan, and later in the temple, color played a very big part. And we'll see a connection also to the 12 tribes. So I'm just going to mention some of them. This is a very, very extensive subject, but the general idea is that every detail in the Torah about the tabernacle has incredible meaning. And the idea is that the tabernacle and later the temple is the microcosm of the macrocosm. So therefore, every color, every metal, every dimension, every length and breadth and width, every color, every placement where things were placed, how tall things were, how wide things were, all had tremendous importance. Hundreds and hundreds of commentaries have been written about this. And so we're just going to touch on a few as it has to do with color. And so one of the best places, if anyone wants to look into this, is Shimon Raphael Hirsch, Rabbi Hirsch, in his commentary on the Chumash, has incredible revelations about all of these dimensions. And we have to understand that Rabbi Hirsch was not a Kabbalist. He was not a Chassid, but he understood very well that every detail of the Mishkan is telling us something for all generations. And so his Perush, it's not a Kabbalistic Perush, but it's a beautiful, very, very fundamental understanding of all the details of the Mishkan. It's a highly recommended. So as far as the colors, we'll just do a couple levels. One, there were 3 metals used. And of course, the metals are different, but their colors are different also. Gold, silver, and copper. Where gold is used, it's telling us something about the nature of what the gold is going into. The silver is considered a lesser metal, and copper is considered lesser than silver. So for example, the outer altar was made out of copper, because this is where the offerings were brought, and a lot of them were sin offerings. And so copper represents that there needs to be a lot of clarification, purification that needs to happen. The inner altar, which is of the incense, was made out of gold, because that's in the inner sanctuary. Everything in the inner sanctuary was made of gold. The sockets that held up the boards were all made from silver. And the outer altar is made of copper. And each one of this is just a level of refinement. And along with the metal is the color. But where the colors really show up is that the curtains of the whole Mishkan and the parochet, the covering between the holy and the Holy of Holies, were all made of woven strands of different colors. So Rabbi Hirsch points out the following, very, very interesting. He says that in the colors and the materials that were woven together, many of the weavings were of strands of 28. There were 28 strands that were woven together to make one strand. And then they were woven together. So in the curtains and also the garments of the Kohanim, there was white, red or scarlet, blue or turquoise, and gold. And so the white came from linen. Linen comes from animals, from plants. Linen comes from plants. There were also gold strands. Gold comes from a mineral. The linen comes from vegetable. The wool comes from animal. And then the wool that was dyed purple represents the human, because purple it's always considered a majestic color, a color of royalty. Purple is a royal color. So it's interesting here is that you had not only these different colors, but the materials themselves represented the mineral world, the vegetable world, the animal world, and the human world. And as I said, they were woven together. 28 strands were woven together to make one strand, and then they were all woven together. It was very, very, very intricate. But the colors were magnificent. And it's very much like we said before, because they were all woven together. And we went in the beginning of the class, we said ultimately all colors are coming from what we'll call the white light, just from the pure white light. If all the colors of the strands were mixed together and spun, they would be white. Because ultimately, we're told that when the curtains were put together, it says, V'haya ha-mishkan echad, and the Mishkan became one. So this is very connected to, and the curtains were just all these colors, all these beautiful woven colors. Now, the other place that we have light and color is on the breastplate of the high priest. There were 12 stones, and 12 different colors, 12 gems. And inside there was a pocket. And inside the pocket, there was what's called the Urim v'Tumim, which Urim comes from the word light, or Tumim comes from the word complete. It's a mystery exactly what the Urim and Tumim were. According to most people, there were names of God that were put in the pocket of the breastplate. And when the Jewish people had existential questions, very, very important questions that affected the whole nation, they would pose the question to the Kohen Gadol. And we're told in a mysterious way, the lights of the gems. Now, I didn't mention, on the gems are letters of the 12 tribes. The names of the 12 tribes are written on each of the letters. And when these questions were asked, the letters began to shine. And then it was up to the Kohen Gadol to kind of figure out the puzzle of these shining letters. So here you have light and color, because each of the gems was a different color. But it was light that was shining through them. How it happened exactly, I would say no one really knows today. But it was recorded and handed down that this incredible thing would happen. And it was coming through the Urim and Tumim. Again, Urim comes from light, was shining through the colored gems and through the letters, forming words to answer the existential question. The other place that we had a lot of color is on the flags of the tribes, how they camped in the desert. And the colors on the flags were connected to the color of the gem on the breastplate. And there's a very, very beautiful midrash that says that when the Torah was given at Sinai, so angels came and they placed 2 crowns on the heads, one for Naaseh and one for Nishma. We will do and we will hear. That's what the people said before receiving the Torah. We will do and we will hear. And this is considered like a very, very high, we'll do even before we understand. God, we trust you so much that whatever you tell us, we will do. So everyone got 2 crowns. After the golden calf, these crowns were taken away. But it also says that these angels came with flags. And it says that the Jewish people were like turned on to these flags. they were like, wow. And they said to God, we also want flags. We also want flags. And God said, you want flags? We're going to make you flags. In the desert, every tribe will have their flag. So the Nativat Shalom asks, what's the story with these flags? What turned them on so much about these flags? And so he answers very, very beautifully. He said that in a sense, the definition of an angel is that an angel has a tafkid, has a purpose. An angel is a messenger of God. And God gives angels a purpose, a task, something to accomplish. We, in our world, talk about a shaliach, a messenger. In Chabad, so the Rabbi sent out thousands of shlichim, thousands of messengers carrying not just his message, but the message of the Torah to the whole world. And we know how incredibly dedicated Chabad shlichim are all over the world. So the Slonim Rebbe in Nativat Shalom says that's what turned Israel onto these flags, because they saw the flags represented purpose. So when they said, oh, we also want flags, what they were saying is, wow, the idea of having purpose, that's what we want. We want to have a purpose in the world. We want to have a mission. And God said, okay, this is right before giving you the Torah. I'm giving you a mission in the world to be a light to the nations. Here's the Torah. Bring it to every Jew, bring it to the whole world. That is your tafkid, that is your purpose. So these flags in the desert, each flag had a color. And these colors were also on the breastplate. So that's a good place to stop. Let's just review for a second this idea of light and color that we learned in the beginning. Seva and Sheva, the word for color and the word for seven are very similar. Seva and Sheva. And we learned that light is called good. It was the first thing in creation called good. And then the rest of creation also. God looked at his creation and said, Tov Ma'od. It's very good. But really, the greatest goodness is light. And everything that light represents, purity, spirituality, godliness, holiness, love, what did I want to say? Unity is, as we said, all the colors when spun together is unified, becomes white, the white light. And so we see that color and light is everywhere, but it's just good to learn some of the symbolism of the different times that color appears in the Torah. So we ended with this idea of purpose. So I want to give everyone a bracha that just like the word orot, the plural of the word light equals 613, and that equals the 613 mitzvot. But each person is different. Each person has their tafkid, their purpose, their mission, in small ways, in big ways. So I just want to bless everyone, that everyone can find their color in the spectrum of light, and through that connect to the whole light through our individual color, connect to the whole light.